Hi, Lupita. It's good to see you. I'm glad that you made it back in. So, we didn't hear from you on the crisis line, so that was a good indicator. The last time we met, you talked to me kind of about your concerns with the safety of your children and the safety of yourself as well. And you said that, you know, you would be fine for a week. And so I just want to kind of start there and see if that actually happened.
We have been fine. We've stayed at the shelter this whole week. I've been too afraid to leave.
So you did go to the shelter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They didn't page me.
Right. He's been harassing my family members, trying to, find me. But
Oh, wow.
he knows he can't, I mean, they're in Mexico, and he thinks that I would tell them, but I wouldn't. So we're safe, but I feel stuck at the shelter.
Okay. So you went to the shelter earlier this week with all of your kids, all five of your children?
Mm-hmm.
So you decided to go ahead and leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he had a poor response to that, and now he's trying to harass your family in Monterey? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds very intense.
Yes. I mean, I don't worry about them because they're so far away. I think it's going to be okay.
So
I just have dreams that he is going to find us, but we left when he was at work, and I didn't tell my job. We're here.
Wow. So you actually in the past week, you've undergone a major life change and having to leave the house secretly, and then go to this place that you've never been to before and try to adapt to that in that new place. It must have felt very strange and a little bit scary to you. Am I correct in saying so?
Yeah, it seems like my only option, because after talking to you, I realize I do want my kids first. I only have one neighbor to count on. I kind of had hit the last straw, and so I guess I'm not really processing all we've done this week. It's kind of been a blur, but we're there and we're safe.
And how has the shelter been? Have they attended to you, or are they taking care of you guys?
We have food. My kids are playing together. I'm worried about their education. My oldest is 5, but I wanted him to continue learning. He was,
So, did you pull them out of school too?
It's an emergency shelter. My 5-year-old, he's in the 2nd year of preschool. It's government, we have free preschool for him. And so, yes, but it's not his kindergarten. I don't feel like it's as important that he's missing, but I do feel like this could put him off track the longer we stay. I don't know how long I'm staying.
Well, you're correct in saying so. It can throw them off track, and you can actually have them, and I didn't know you knew this about the shelter. I thought that maybe a case manager there would explain this to you, but you have the option of enrolling your children in another school, although the principal from the other school would have to contact the other school, and you have to petition the school district. But that's a whole different other thing, but we can address that, and I can help you through that. I can see that that's a really big concern, and you're worried about your babies. So we'll work on that, it seems. Okay. Speaking of working on things, the purpose of today's visit is definitely to address your concerns. Okay. And I need to collect information from you, and it's to better just kind of understand your situation and get to know you. So I'll be asking questions about your history, okay, and current things, other things. Any question that I do ask, and if you feel uncomfortable in sharing that information, you have every right to say I don't feel like sharing that information, and I will respect that. Okay. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last time we met, but I want to reinforce to you that your information is private. Your husband does not have access to this information at all. Okay? For that matter, no one outside of our agency and the people who are working have access to this information. We hold everything in confidence. And here at the agency, it's only people who are related to your case. And when I say that, it's me and my supervisor, because I have a higher up that I report to and I have supervision with. And, sometimes she'll ask me questions, and she's there to better help me, help you, going back to what I mentioned earlier, I'm going to ask you some questions. Some of the questions are kind of detailed. I hope you don't mind. I also like to write, so I don't forget the information. I get off track too, by the way, and it keeps me on track because I would chat you up. I'll chat you up, So then afterwards, I want to look at some ideas that you have and any other concerns maybe that you thought of while we were talking, and then create maybe a plan of action, okay? All right, so I got some information from you last time. We talked about, I think, your husband's drinking, and then you mentioned to me, I had asked you about your father or your family in Monterey, and you mentioned that your father was a drinker, or still is. Is that the situation? Okay. So, how about the rest of your family?
My mother is kind of like me.
Okay.
We don't drink. Someone's got to be responsible for the family. So it just seems to be the males. His father, my grandpa, was alcoholic too.
All right. And how would you say that they drank? Do you feel that they drink heavily all the time? Sometimes on specific holidays, like?
I'd say when they do, it's heavily. When they're together, especially. For my dad and grandpa, it doesn't turn violent as my husband did. I feel like he depended on it more, but with my dad, it was nightly, it became 3 or 4, so probably too many, but he didn't lay hands on us, so that's why I don't see it as a problem.
Okay, so he drank heavily. Would you say daily or weekly?
Daily.
Daily, okay. But he never got to a point where he was aggressive with you,
right?
Like your husband was. So there's a difference.
Yes.
Okay. And from what I understand, it seems to be like the males. Is that a part of the culture, you think?
At least in our family, it just seems like the women are responsible at home for making sure the kids are taken care of, and the men are sober in the day, so they can earn the money, but they come home and they don't need to be. They need to be fed, and then they need to de-stress. Okay.
So it made me think of something when you said they need to be fed and they need to de-stress. It's almost like an extra responsibility for you to take care of your partner, your husband. So
that's true. Adds on to my kids and then him.
Sounds like you have a lot on you still do have a lot on your plate, but having responsibility of taking care of your husband under intense, conditions, along with your 5 children, that you had to nurture and bathe and clean and feed, still do, and maintain the house too.
Yes.
Sounds like it was very stressful, or could be.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised, it's what women do. We have to take care of the house. We have to take care of the family.
Do you like being a homemaker?
I do like knowing that I'm helping care for my kids. I also clean houses, to help the income, and so I don't like other people's houses, but I do like to know that I took care of mine.
Okay, I want to write that down. You clean houses, okay.
Or I did until I left.
So did you make decent money? Did you work part-time?
Yeah, just 3 days a week.
3 days a week.
So what I could manage with my kids, because I would leave them with my neighbor.
Okay.
And then the preschool, but no outside help because we could not afford that. So she watched them for free, and then she's elderly. So.
Okay. All right. So you work 3 times a week cleaning houses, and did you like doing that?
It's good to see other women and hear about their lives. I've got some women that I work with that kind of complain about their husbands too, and just to hear that not everything that I see is out of the ordinary. You know, they have to take care of their families, they have stress too, just like me.
Okay, all right. So it seems as if though, you know, working 3 times a week on top of all those other responsibilities though, that maybe your work gave you some type of satisfaction, maybe other than receiving money?
Yeah, it's good, I think, to, you know, not just talk to little toddlers, you know, to talk to someone my age and just hear what, like, because some of them also just came to the United States maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe as recently as last year, and so kind of hearing back from the old country how it was, you know, Mexico with that culture. It's good to hear from home.
Oh yeah, that sounds nice, to be surrounded by, you know, people who speak the same language and understand, and you know, the same culture. And then talking about home, sounds like you reflect back, you call it home or the old country, and sounds like it was positive, you know, for you. So that sounds wonderful. That's good to know. Okay, so getting me back on track. Let me see. How long have you had this job for, or had this job before? Had you had it for like a year or 2 years, or did you just get it?
This was my second year.
Okay, so 2 years of employment. Oh, that, you know, that's definitely a strength I see here. You know, on top of some other things that I've noticed, by the way. Here I go getting off track, but I do have to commend you on your desire to change your situation. That shows intense love for not only your children but yourself. So I just think it's a wonderful quality about you, on top of this wonderful employment history. Okay, so all right. So we talked about employment. I have some follow-up questions about the substance use here. Is maybe, do you feel that your husband's drinking, if it, let's say that he was to quit drinking, do you think that that would solve the problem?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think he'd have more clarity in his decision, but it might make him also angry that he can't reach for that drink, so then he might act out against us again.
Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking at obstacles possibly for you in the future. Since he is, it seems obvious that he's upset and he's trying to get your family's attention, and he can't get your attention because you don't know where you're at, you know. But in the event, I'm just trying to see if there's any possible obstacle for you as far as like him and approaching you or any of that. Okay, all right. So I see here that you went to school and you went to the 10th grade. When you were in school, did you ever have any trouble with your classes or learning or any of that?
I guess getting work done at home was hard because I was trying to help. I mean, back then I was trying to help my mom and her. She worked in the restaurant, and so I'd help after school with that. And so sometimes I wouldn't do my homework. It's not that I didn't know how, I just didn't have time. So I feel like if I had had more time, I would have probably done pretty well. But you know, I also got married at 16, didn't finish school, so we won't know if I could have done better.
All right, and what I was alluding to is maybe if you had a problem learning the information, but it doesn't sound that way. It sounds like if you just had enough energy, you know, and focus, you would have succeeded. But 10th grade level, I mean, you made it pretty far. All right, so I'm looking at also, just like your educational background, did your mom and dad go to school?
Not for long. I want to say my dad lasted till 6th grade, my mom, maybe 8th grade.
My grandfather's from Mexico, and he went to the 6th grade, and at the time that was I think the 8th grade was a big, you know, a big deal, but he got a 6th grade education. So, all right, I'm looking here. Do you receive any kind of government assistance like food stamp?
We had WIC for each child.
Okay.
Yeah, missed my last appointment, so I didn't get the last 2 months worth, but
Okay.
I have been receiving WIC.
All right. So I want to write that down. And did you, do your children have health insurance?
I haven't applied.
Because I see that you're legal, so you're eligible for a lot of different services. Okay. So I know that if the children receive Medicaid, because they're eligible, okay, you would qualify as well. From what I understand, I'd like to refer you, if that's okay, to assist you with that.
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
We can add it on. Doctors, dealing with that, 5 children's in the doctor's office, I tried to avoid them as much as possible. But I know it's important.
Well, I know that you are young, so you're pretty healthy, although you wouldn't believe what stress can do to a young person even. So considering your situation and what happened to you, going through the experience that you had, that can take a physical toll on someone. And so I was curious, about having maybe you see a doctor at some point. Now that's something that stands out to me, and we can discuss it, further if you like, at a later time. I hear you say, I really don't trust doctors, you don't have time for that, I'm a busy lady, I got big changes going on in my life, and I don't want to complicate things, and it's one thing at a time, I get that. But I find that it doesn't hurt just to get a checkout, since you left the hospital, I know that the doctors want you to follow up with them, so again, that's something we can address at a later time. All right. So that actually is a nice segue to my next thing I want to talk to you about is health, physical health. Have you ever had a past illness?
No, in terms of pregnancies, my last one, Josephine, she was very premature, and I had been on bed rest. So I guess as far as carrying her, you could count that as an illness. I just wasn't as successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were hospitalized. It looks like you were put on bed rest prior and after?
Just prior, then I had her early, about 4 weeks early.
And so you saying that she was premature, she was hospitalized after,
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
She stayed in the hospital for another 3 months.
Okay. 3 months. So you had to go home and take care of your kids.
Right.
And then come and check on your baby. And then bring the family up there. That sounds like that was some pretty exhausting and intense times for you. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Okay, so no other diagnosis that you can think of? Okay, any accidents other than, last week? And what I'm referring to is car accidents.
Right. No.
Okay, so I was just inquiring more about like the hospitalization. No disabilities here. Okay. Do you take any medications?
I don't.
Okay. All right. Are there any psychological concerns maybe that you have with your family, or maybe your family back home? Were they ever diagnosed with anything psychological like depression or anxiety or?
My grandma had Alzheimer's
Okay.
before she died, but that was later in life for her, so it's not a present concern.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Alzheimer's is just something that seems to be in your family. Okay. Okay. And growing up, do you feel that you had a good relationship with your family, with your parents?
With my parents, I felt like I was an employee mostly once I could work in the restaurant. So I didn't feel as close to them. I didn't see them as, I see families here in America, and I've seen some of them just be very loving towards each other. And I had that with my grandma, but not my parents.
Okay. Okay. Can you tell me of maybe an important family story that sticks out to you? Maybe a good memory of, kind of give me a bigger, like, I'm trying to look at a picture, get a peek inside your family maybe a little bit.
When I was still too young to work in the restaurant, I would come home from school and my grandma would be there, and sometimes she'd have like warm tortillas ready, and she just talked to me, and she kind of taught me how to sew, and so that's what we would work on together. So.
With grandma, so that's something that you looked forward to. And do you still sew?
I was with the church. I was working on my prayer shawl, so I was until all this happened.
And since going to the shelter, have you guys been able to go to church?
No, I'm just trying to stick us in one location. I don't really want to branch out.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just kind of thinking forward. Sometimes I just thinking forward, like, okay, how can we coordinate that? Okay. All right. So what I'd like to do is I want to ask you a question. Okay. Requires your imagination. All right. So I want you to imagine that you go to sleep tonight. Okay. And you wake up tomorrow, and your life has changed for the better. Okay. And pretty much like a miracle has happened. Okay? Like all your problems are solved. Can you describe to me what that looks like?
I guess starting with my husband, he's not drinking. He comes home, he's happy to see us. He plays with the kids, eats dinner with us, tells us about his day, and go to sleep without anyone yelling. That would be a good start.
Okay. So it sounds like, to me, you would like to have a happy marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So you're interested in putting this back together.
I think that, because what would happen to him if I didn't, Like, he's what started this family too, and yeah, he's made mistakes, but
okay. So are you feeling like, you're indicating to me by sharing this with me that you're possibly looking towards reconciliation with your husband? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for giving me that information. That gives me some clarity on which direction we can go in when we visit. I definitely want to be of service to you and a source of information to you and support. Okay. I've noticed as we've been talking, I've been asking you some tough questions, and I've noticed that you seemed a little hesitant in the beginning in giving me some information, and I really appreciate this. I know this is a delicate situation, and it's really hard, to go from here, but it is possible. and you appear to be optimistic about some possible changes in your life. So I'm looking forward to working with you. Okay, so what I've seen here is that you would possibly like to reconcile with your husband, get your kids back in school, and possibly work on some health. I don't entirely want to say concerns, but it has been a concern. I also am just thinking, with all of this in mind, safety. To me, safety is the number one in any situation. So I'm wondering if safety would be a goal for you.
Yes, more for my kids than me.
Okay. And you've already started, kind of, going